Hi and welcome, it's Ollie here at the Crafty Whisk. Today I'm going to be showing you two different kinds of masking. Now there are probably a few other different ways of masking, but these are the two methods that I find work for me. I'll be showing you using the Mama Elephant Celebration Cake and matching dies, and also from Mama Elephant is the Hooray streamers. And I thought I'd just make a couple of birthday cards. So I'm using my Misty because I want to do a few cards and this enables me to have the stamp in the exact same position each time. I'm using the Memento Copic friendly ink because I'll be using Copics to colour in. And as you can see, I'm just stamping. This first method is sort of what's at the foreground the most is what I'm stamping first and then going backwards. So I've cut out a mask from the Gina K masking magic, but you don't have to use that. You can use, in the past I've just used normal copy paper and then just popped a little bit of temporary glue stick on it to make it stick. So I'm popping the mask of the stamp on the stamp itself. And now I'm going to be stamping the cake layer. So what will happen with the masking is that you won't have the line of the cake going through the ice cream cone. It goes on the mask instead, as you can see there. It's a pretty cool technique to use. It's really good for doing backgrounds and foregrounds and things like that. So I'm just doing a few while I've got the stamps out. And as you can see with the Misty, I'm able to get it in the same place each time. So now I am going to be showing you how I actually cut the mask itself, because I need the cake portion. There's a cake on a cake stand and I need the cake portion. So you just stamp the image onto the front of the masking magic. You can use any ink, doesn't matter. And then you can fussy cut around the image. And the really good thing is you can just use a part of an image, which is what I'm doing here. I just want the cake portion, not the cake stand portion. I'm just going sort of not right on the line. I'm going a little bit outside the line to give myself a little bit of leeway, because I want to actually stamp the cake stand, not the piece of cake. But I can easily draw the extra bit of the cake stand in for the bit that I'm missing. So probably the hardest thing here is actually lining up the cake from where I want the stand to be. Probably doesn't make sense. It's probably easier if you just watch. So I've got the mask on. And now I'm only going to be inking up the cake stand portion and as little of the cake as possible. Which is why I did the cake mask a little bit bigger in case I did get some ink on the cake portion. So there you go. That's the cake stand done. I'll just do a couple more while I'm at it. And I've also left the ice cream cone mask on as well, just in case the ink gets to the top of the stamp, which shouldn't, but I like to be safe. And I'm not really overly fond of this method because I feel that I have to line up the cake stand each time The other method I show you I actually find easier, but I think this is the more traditional way of doing it. But really, it's whatever works for you. So now I just use the Memento black pen because also it is Copic safe, but you can just use a fine liner. You just got to be careful when you use your Copics with the fine liner, that's all. So now I'm going to be showing you the other way, which is sort of the opposite. So I've got the mask down again of the cake, which is sitting on the cake stand. So I've just masked the cake portion. And I'll be stamping only the cake stand. And then remove the mask. I'm just going to do a few again. And now for the next layer, which is the smaller cake base. I'm just popping that onto where I want it to sit on the cake stand. But I also need to put in the mask of the ice cream cone because I want the ice cream cone sitting on top. And if I didn't have that there, the whole cake base would stamp out and I'd have a line where I want the ice cream cone to be. So you can see there that there's a gap where I want the ice cream cone to go. And now I can stamp the ice cream cone. So it's kind of the reverse method of masking, but I find it easier, especially with the Memento pen, because you can just go in and attach any lines that are missing. I found this method quicker and easier, but I don't think it's actually the traditional way, but it's the way I did it 25 years ago, and it still works. So now I'm just going to stamp out a couple of the critters that I want to go on the card. And I'm going to do multiple stampings of these guys as well because I'm doing a few cards. So I'm just going to stamp them once, rotate the piece of cardstock, stamp them again, pop the next piece of cardstock in, do it a few times, and then I'll actually move the critters on the MISTI to go into those gaps. Now you can use a bigger piece of cardstock and do it all at once. I've got my cardstock pre-cut to these sizes because I like using my little mini Heffy Doodle die cutting machine, and I can just cut these guys into strips and it goes through that machine perfectly. Now I will speed through the colouring process. I'll put the list of Copics in the description box if you want to know what those are. And by no means am I a very good colourist. I don't even think I follow all the rules of Copic colouring. I don't think there is sort of like hard and fast rules, but I tend to start with the darkest colour on the edges and then blend through with the lighter colours. And I don't have an extensive collection of Copics. So with these blue-green colours, which I love, and I will get some more, to build up the colour, you go over it a few times and the colour builds up. So you don't have to have the full extent of Copics. You can just keep building up the colour as you go. And I love this set. This set really appealed to me because I was a cake decorator for quite a few years as well. And I just loved doing this particular set. It kind of brought back memories of cake decorating and it was fun to do. But actually, I never actually did an ice cream cone cake. Did a few drip cakes in my time, but never with an ice cream cone on top. It's funny that. Now I'm just doing the base. I was trying to make it look a little bit like a gold base. I didn't like how it turned out in the end, and you'll see that I actually show you another version of me colouring in these images as well. I thought all these colours would look really good, and I wasn't happy with the end result. So I changed it. I still gave away the card that had this one on it because it was just me being fussy. I didn't like the colouring myself, but everyone else I showed did. So there you go. And I also found the chick ended up too dark. So when I redid the chick, he ended up being a lighter colour. My yellows in the Copics are not extensive at all, and they tend to go onto the quite bright side, and I wasn't sure how to dull it down. Probably should have opted for pencils for this one, but I was being lazy, and the Copics are right next to me. It would actually look really pretty watercoloured as well, I think. But I love the little mama elephant critters. They're so easy to colour. They're so darned cute. And I'm just bringing in the same colours that I did for the main cake and the cake stand. I didn't want to have a huge colour palette. I wanted everything to sort of like tie in as best as I could. And I'm sorry, this is probably the longest part of the video, so feel free to skip through to when I finish making the card. The bunny rabbit I wanted to be quite plain, so I just used a really, really pale, I think it was an E colour from memory, the E21 and E30 and E35, I think, but I'll have it listed down below. So I'm just going to cut these guys out just to see how it all sits. And this is when I realise that I went with a different colour palette. And I've got my little mini Heffy Doodle die cutting machine. It is such a cool little machine. I love it. It is effortless to use. It's so much easier than dragging out the big one. And there, with the magic of television, they are cut out. And that's when I realised I didn't like the yellow cake stand because there was just too much yellow. So I changed the yellow to the dark grey, as you can see there, and then I went with the soft pink instead. The soft pink really, it kind of toned everything down a bit, which I felt it needed, and the chicks ended up being lighter as well. So I'm just recolouring in, and I think I only used the one BG colour in the end. I just darkened it up a few times on the edges to build the colour up and then blended it through so it was quite a pale cake, like a mint cake. So you can always just keep building up your layers with the one Copic colour. And there's Mr. Orion. You might see my hand do some weird things because he ends up jumping and sitting on top of my Copic pens, and he flicks them all out of their holder. And it's always while I'm filming. So that's a much softer result there. I liked it a lot better. Now this is the Mama Elephant Hooray Streamers set. And I just cut out a bunch of them out of different colour cardstocks so that you can mix and match what goes on the card. And I kept all of those little bits in with the dies. So next time I want to do a card, I've got them ready to go. And I'm just using the Waffle Flower Mini Media Mat because I just felt the card needed something on it. So I'm just going around the edges with the butter colour from Lawn Fawn ink, and it just gives it just a slight blush of colour around the edges, because I'm going to cut this panel down as well, because the panel itself is the size of a card, but I wanted to layer it with some colour behind it as well. I'm just using a finger dauber. I tend to keep the finger daubers in with my mini inks. They're just easy to use for this sort of thing, rather than dragging out the big blending brushes and foam domes. And I'm going to be using an A2 stitched it's the A2 set of stitched rectangles from My Favourite Things. And I'm using the second largest one, because I'll be layering with the largest one with a piece of coloured cardstock behind. So I'm just making sure here that the blush colour is able to be seen through when I have cut it down to size. And this leaves a lovely little stitched element on there as well, which is really pretty. And if you did the ink blending after you did the die cut, the stitching would be more prominent. But I didn't want it to be prominent, I just wanted it to be in the background. So now I've got the fun of adhering these little things, and they are tiny. And I really didn't want to fiddle with glue. So I have a really old Xyron machine, just a little like X-shaped one, and I've just recently bought a little bit bigger one. It's the 5-inch Xyron machine, and literally I've just taken it out of its box, popped in the cartridge of the sticky paper, and I'm just doing a few of these because otherwise you're wasting the sticky paper, so you might as well get as much in there as you can. And I wasn't 100% sure how to actually use the machine. I thought it would work just by turning the handle, which I'm sure when I've watched on YouTube, that's what they did. It didn't seem to work for me. I don't know if the cartridge wasn't in properly or what the story was. I was determined to make it work, so I ended up shoving them in as far as I could, and see there the sticky bit went everywhere, and I just pulled it through, and that seemed to work. So I'll have to have a practice with this, but I love the Xyron machines because they make a sticker out of what you're making. The only thing I don't like about it is when you use it straight out of the machine, you get little cobwebby glue bits. So to get rid of the cobwebby bits, you put it through your die machine, your die cutting machine, and the rollers will compress everything and will make the glue only stick to your actual die cut. And I just had to use a shim, and it probably would have been better if I had have used the embossing rubber mat. I'll try that next time, I think. If you don't have a die cutting machine, you can just use a bone folder and really burnish it well, and it should have a similar effect. So what this has done for me is, once I get this little bit down, you peel everything off, and what you are left with on the backing sheet is basically stickers. So no need for glue. And there's no little cobwebby bits because I compressed everything. So much easier. Then you just pick it up and plop it on your work. No extra glue needed. So good. And it is really sticky. Really sticky. But only on the back. This was the bit I really didn't want to muck around with glue with. I could just see myself having glue all over my fingers, all over the front of the card. So I'm really pleased with this result. So all that's left now to do is chop off those little ends. And if I had have been smart, I would have lined them up against one edge so that the bits that I cut off, I could have actually used on the next card more effectively. But we live and learn, don't we? We live and learn. Those extra bits I pop into where I keep my dies so that they're ready for next time I use them. My apologies if you can hear Mr. Orion in the background. He's demanding my attention even though he's just been fed. So I'm going to pop the critters up onto some foam dots. I'm using the ones from Snazzy Scrappin' because they're only a millimetre high. So it's not too much bulk on the card. And with foam dots and foam squares, don't be afraid to cut them up into the size that you require. I tend to use a Teflon coated scissors so that it doesn't stick all over them. But if it does, you just need some eucalyptus oil to rub over your scissor blades and it'll all come off. I find they get all over my fingers though. I'm such a fumble fingers when it comes to these little things, and then trying to get the backings off. But I've got my little trusty, I don't know what you would call this tool. I've had this tool for over 30 years and it is still going strong. It's from Creative Memories and it's just got like a really fine, I want to call it blade, but it's not a blade, it's just plastic at one end, and it's just that perfect thinness to just go underneath the backing paper of double-sided tape and glued and foam dots. I think the other side is meant to be a scorer, but I found it always too sharp to score with. Okay, so we're just going to make the card up now. So I've just got standard cards, 8.5 by, oh, when I say 5, I can't remember. I've got them all pre-cut. And then I just use my scoreboard to actually line up the fold properly so that it's folded exactly in half, and just use a Teflon bone folder to make the crease nice and crisp. I always use a Teflon one because when you use coloured cardstock, it doesn't add shine to it, whereas the plastic bone folders will make your card shine, which isn't great. So I'm just going to back it onto some pale, I think it's lilac, just from my stash. And here's where my best laid plans went different again. I was going to use the card, the lilac as the actual card panel base, and I thought it was too thick. So I've just grabbed the biggest stitched rectangle die and I've cut it down to size. You can see that I'm just making sure it's correct. So this has the nice stitching element on that the white panel had, and I like that much better. It just looked more symmetrical. So I've just stuck it all down. I did pop the white panel is glued directly down onto the lilac, and the lilac one I popped up onto foam strips. And then just to finish, well, not quite finish, but one of the finishing elements, I'm just putting glossy accents on the bunny's glasses. And I hadn't used this for a day or so, so it did clog up a little bit. You just stick a stainless steel pin in there. I keep my pin secured in a cut off of a bit of eraser, just so that I don't lose the pin because I've got cats. And I'm just using the glossy accents on his glasses, on the candle flames, and the chick's little star on his party hat. And then I didn't think it was finished yet, so I've gotten some sprinkles out of my collection. These are from Dawn Lewis Imagery. And I'm doing the painstaking gluing of said sprinkles onto the bottom of the cake. If anyone knows an easier way to do this, please comment below, because this took forever. It really did. So I'm not going to bore you with it. I'm just going to show you how I did one, and then magic of television, it'll be finished. There you go. And then I still didn't think it was finished, so I popped on some sequins as well. And these are the Gilded sequins from Simon Says Stamp. So there's no hole in the middle of them. They're like a completely flat sequin. They're great if you don't want to add the dimension of a sequin. I think I love these. These might be my favourite thing this year. Well, one of them. And I'm just using I think it's a Marvy jewel picker. It's just got like a sticky end on it. You can also just use a toothpick with a bit of blue tack on the end. That works just as well. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and share and like. And I'll see you next time.